All right, folks, let's get going. We got a bunch of stuff election related here. We are going to be giving our final analysis and predictions toward the conclusion of the program, but almost all of our segments tonight are election related segments. Let's start out with a Jill Stein story here. European Greens asked Jill Stein to stand down and endorse Kamala Harris. The U.S. Green Party leader urged to withdraw from presidential race to prevent a Donald Trump victory. That's right. The European Green Party wants Jill Stein.
They all drink Johnny Walker Black, I promise you.
Yeah, right, exactly.
All of them.
They want Jill Stein out of this race because it's a little too close for comfort, they say. A coalition of European Greens have urged the U.S. Green Party's nominee, Jill Stein, to pull out of next week's election and endorse Kamala Harris to stop Donald Trump from becoming president. Green parties in 16 European countries, from Portugal to Ukraine, distanced themselves. Well, Ukraine's not a big shock. Distanced themselves from their U.S. counterparts in a statement on Friday and called for Stein to withdraw from the race. Hey, no disrespect to Ukraine, but do you think you have matters a little more urgent than whether Jill Stein drops out of the race? We are clear that Kamala Harris is the only candidate who can block Donald Trump and his anti-democratic authoritarian policies from the White House, they wrote.
It's almost like Ukraine is trying to interfere in our elections.
I know, yeah, a little interference. That's true. Not just them, but 16, them and 15 others. That's a good point. The signatories include Green parties from several countries in which they govern as part of coalitions, such as Germany, Ireland, Belgium, and Spain. The party said there was, quote, no link between the Greens in Europe and the U.S. The U.S. Greens are no longer a member of the global organization of Green parties, they wrote. I'm sure that stings. In part, this fissure resulted from the relationship with parties with authoritarian leaders and serious policy differences on key issues, including Russia's full-scale assault on Ukraine. So the Green parties, and, we've known this for a while, the Green parties in Europe are basically lib parties. They don't serve the same purpose that the Greens
I'm sorry,
serve
though.
here, at least on paper.
Yeah, I don't understand that. The Greens don't have relationships with anybody.
Yeah.
What authoritarian parties do they have a relationship with?
I mean, they would point to Jill Stein being photographed at a table with Putin, probably. That would be.
Yeah, but they specifically said parties. Parties that have. What party?
I mean, what
they're
what
not
they're
affiliated with any party.
No, but I mean, what they're clearly saying is that, and like I said, it's been known for a while. The European Greens are much more lib than the Greens.
No, I know. I just the parties part. I don't know what the hell they're talking about. I mean, are they referring to Putin as representing a party? Is that what they mean by that?
Who knows? Who knows? But I'm sure that's what they are hinting at there. Not so subtly either, because the Greens in Europe have been very pro-NATO.
Does he even have a party?
Yeah.
Like he's not. Is he even part of a political party, Putin?
I'm not sure, actually. I'm not sure what the exact situation is there, but I do know that the Greens are very pro-NATO in Europe. That's a big sort of marker, a big sort of point of differentiation between the U.S. Green Party and the European Green Party.
Yeah, we've really seen in the last few years, if you're on the left, there's always been a tendency to look to Europe as this more enlightened place. And let's face it, in the back of your mind is always, well, worst comes to worst, I'll go to Europe. We're starting to see the consequence of the fact that they don't have certain protections like a First Amendment. And they're actually, in many ways, they're ending up being worse than the United States, certainly not in terms of available health care, but in terms of things like this idea that Europe is a more enlightened society, that they've kind of torched that over the last few years.
Yeah, no, for sure. For sure. Well, I mean, especially in these kinds of contexts here. Green parties in Europe are calling for Jill Stein to withdraw. In their tweet, the race for the White House is too close for comfort. We call on her to withdraw from the race and endorse Kamala Harris for president of the United States. So too close for comfort, that really gives away that they are oppositional up to a point. And I'm not even sure if the European Greens deserve that classification to begin with, since we've known this about them for quite some time. But it is pretty telling that with a week to go, they're actually calling on their U.S. counterpart, which of course they claim no association with at this point,
right,
to withdraw from the race. On November 5th, the world will be watching to see whether Americans choose Kamala Harris or Donald Trump to be their next president. This is the Euro Greens statement. Ahead of these pivotal elections, European Greens have called upon U.S. Green Party candidate Jill Stein to withdraw her presidential candidacy and endorse Kamala Harris. The stakes of these elections could not be higher. Donald Trump has promised that if he becomes president again, he will extend abortion bans, deny members of the LGBTQIA plus community their rights, and deport migrants en masse. Like other ultra-conservative politicians across the globe with whom he has close relationships, such as, there you go, Vladimir Putin, Viktor Orban, Jair Bolsonaro, he would undermine democracy. Now, I don't know what they're worried about vis-a-vis Bolsonaro, who's not in power anymore. This is dated, from a few days ago, so I don't really know what they're worried about there. The European Green family, made up of Green parties from across Europe, advocate for a politics that prioritizes the planet, people, and peace above corporate greed, systemic injustice, and violence. We are clear that Kamala Harris is the only candidate who can block Donald Trump and his anti-democratic authoritarian policies from the White House. This election takes place at a watershed moment in the history of our planet. We face a climate crisis that is worsening every year with heat waves, floods, and a loss of biodiversity at a rate never seen before. You know who we're really seeing disappear at an alarming rate? Palestinians. That's really something that I'm pretty alarmed by that. Climate policies require a democratic institutions which we fear would be dismantled if Trump is elected. On top of this, wars are raging and authoritarianism is growing throughout the world. In this crucial moment, Europe needs Kamala Harris as president of the United States to be a reliable partner and take the urgent, decisive action needed on the climate crisis and to bring about a just and sustainable peace in the Middle East. Yeah, good luck. European Greens also highlight the divergent values and policies of themselves and Jill Stein's U.S. Green Party. There is no link between the two, as U.S. Greens are no longer a member of the global organization of Green Parties.
Then why don't you shut the fuck up?
Yeah, right, exactly. Then why are you calling on her to withdraw?
Why don't you tell the libertarians to drop out?
Yeah, there you go. There's an idea. In part, this fissure resulted from their relationship with parties with authoritarian leaders. There it is, and serious policy differences, blah, blah, blah. That was quoted in the article. There are the signatures. Max Blumenthal tweets out, the most prominent Green Party figure in Europe deserves to be put on trial for sponsoring genocide. Why haven't you condemned her? He's talking, of course, about Annalena Baerbock, a Green and Germany's foreign minister, supports genocide. Of course, Europe's Greens want Jill Stein to withdraw. They're for genocide, and so is Kamala Harris. There you have it, Margaret Kimberly. But you love war. No one cares what you think. This in response to the Green Party letter. Hey, Dr. Jill Stein herself says, we call on European Greens to stop supporting genocide in Gaza and suppressing democracy in U.S. elections. That's right. Stop interfering with democracy in U.S. elections. And like I said, just to give you a bit of an idea who the European Greens are, this was their most recent Halloween post. Let's give the far-right nightmares this Halloween. Trigger warning, the following images may be disturbing to fascists. And there you have it. Love is love. Climate change is real. Yeah. Abortion for all. It's basically a in this house lawn sign set here in the United States.
They don't have more lawns there, so they have to make memes.
Exactly. They got to make memes. And this ought to give you an indication. Now, this gives you an indication of how much weight they pull. Notice a whopping 33 people voted in the European Greens online poll. Wow. But these were the questions that they asked. They say, what do you think scares them the most?
33 very representative people, though.
Yeah, exactly. Them meaning the far right. So this was attached to that previous tweet. What scares the far right the most? Strong, independent women. Freedom of speech, that's nice to know. At least they believe in freedom of speech. That's more I could say for the libs here. Yeah. Equal marriage for all and phasing out fossil fuels. Okay, so that kind of gives you an idea of where they're coming from. They would fit very nicely in the United States Democratic Party. So this isn't really a shock that they favor Kamala Harris over Donald Trump. It is a bit surprising that they would interject themselves, or at least try to interject themselves into the debate as much as to actually urge Jill Stein to drop out of the race in the final week of the campaign. But there you have it. And the Greens here told them basically to go get their fucking shine box. Not that they needed to be told anything. But there you have it. The European Greens once again showing who they are.
Yeah, they believe in freedom of speech like our politicians believe in democracy, like the Roman emperors believed in the republic. It's good branding to say they believe in freedom of speech. They don't actually believe in freedom of speech, and actually, that was pretty low relative to the other things on that poll.
No, but I mean, at least
I
they included it in the poll. That's what I'm saying.
Well, they did they
Like, the
include
Democrats wouldn't even put that in the poll. Like the U.S. Democratic Party wouldn't even
sure.
have that as an option.
I mean, they might as a virtue signal.
I
They
doubt
might
it.
as a virtue say. Well, you're probably right. They don't
Yeah.
even like to bring up the whole subject.
No, they're
But
openly hostile to it.
but are they fighting against the European hate speech laws that are making social media platforms subject to fines
I mean, my
for
guess would
statements
be
on their?
no.
All right, so they don't really believe in freedom of speech, but I guess the brand has not been quite as tarnished there as it has here, where literally libs have been fighting this war to define a belief in freedom of speech as right wing since 2016. I guess that is not as advanced there.
Right. Yeah, I think that is true. So Jill Stein not dropping out of the race despite the advice of the European Green Party. She is still on the ballot in many states and available as a write-in in many more, including Illinois and New York, which are big population states. We'll be writing in Jill Stein in New York. And, of course, Michigan is the big push. Obviously, that's the center of the Abandon Harris movement. And we advise everybody everywhere to write her name in on Election Day.
Please clap.